Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take. It's that time of week to go over my NFL predictions for Week 10. So let's get started with tonight's football game between the Raiders and the Broncos, or 9.5 point favorites. The Raiders finally looked like they had some life coming off the bye week last week against Jacksonville, but came up just short. However, I don't think that momentum will continue against a divisional rival on the road on a short week. I know a road team finally won on Thursday Night Football last week, although we predicted that. But I feel like that new streak of road teams on Thursday Night Football make it continue now. So I have Denver winning 27-16. Next, we guess a Sunday morning game between the Falcons and the Colts, who are 6.5 point favorites. In this game is interesting in being in Berlin. The Falcons were a missed PAT potentially away from being beating a red hot New England team last week. And now instead of having that happen, now they're 2 games under 500. And if they lose this game, then it's going to be hard to see the path for them to make the playoffs. For the Colts, quarterback Daniel Jones finally looked like the Giants version of Daniel Jones I've been expecting all year. The big question is, was last week, just a bad game? Or will he show some regression now and not play like, an MVP candidate like he was for most of the season? The Colts trade a top 5 corner, for Sauce Gardner from the Jets. The Colts front office definitely still believes that he can lead a team to a Super Bowl right now. I think this will be a close game. I'm not sure exactly what to expect in this game, but I will lean on Colts head coach Shane Steichen, figure things out for Daniel Jones on offense and getting the Colts to win here, either winning 23-20. Next, we get the Browns, who are 2.5 point favorites versus the Jets. Both teams are coming off the bye week. The Jets were sellers of the trade deadline, as we know, with Sauce Gardner gone and Quillen Williams gone. So now that they got their 1 win, so they don't have to go winless, I feel like now they're gonna at least what they should be doing is tanking and trying to get the #1 pick so they can hopefully get their another crack at the quarterback of the future. Since we know Justin Fields is not it. But regardless, Browns defense, I feel like will take care of business here. I have Cleveland winning 24-13. Next, you get the Jaguars, who are 1.5 point favorites versus the Texans. Houston quarterback CJ Stroud was ruled out in this game. Therefore, the Jaguars will get a win here. Since Houston couldn't already do a lot of offense to begin with CJ Stroud, but now without him, it's going to be even harder. So I have Jacksonville winning 20-13. Next, you get the Bills, who are 9.5 point favorites versus the Dolphins. And the Dolphins played Buffalo tough on the road back in like in week 2 or 3 of the season, early in the season. I'll be surprised if that's the case again this year. The Bills want to keep pace with New England, so I feel like they'll win and win easily. I have them winning 34-21. Next, you get the Patriots versus the Buccaneers, who are 2.5 point favorites. The Patriots, have been on a tear over the last month. However, if you look at the last 3 teams that they played and beaten, it was teams with losing records. With Tampa Bay coming off a bye week, I think Bucs head coach Todd Bowles will have something to scheme up for the Patriots quarterback Drake May. And even though some key players are questionable to play this week for Tampa, I feel like Tampa can get a win here. And then winning 27-23. Next, you get the Giants versus the Bears, who are 4.5 point favorites. There's not a lot to say about this game. If you're Chicago and you want to sneak into the playoffs, this is the type of game you got to win. So I have them winning 34-20. Next, we get the Ravens, who are 4.5 point favorites versus the Vikings. It was great for Minnesota to get a big win last week, and have J.J. McCarthy, the first-year quarterback, look good as well. I think the Ravens' defense, can cause some opportunities where maybe he can look good again. But I do think with Lamar Jackson being back for Baltimore, that makes Baltimore ascending and gives. I feel like they'll start to reach levels that we thought they could reach at the beginning of the season. So I think the Ravens will get the big road win here, but I do feel the Vikings can cover the spread, though, and make it a close game. I have Baltimore winning 23-21. Next, we got the Saints versus the Panthers, who are 5.5 point favorites. The Panthers, after upsetting Green Bay last week, they have a chance to sneak into the playoffs for sure, which is crazy. And if they're going to do that, then you got to win games like this. I have them winning 24-16. Next, you get the Cardinals versus the Seahawks, who are 6.5 point favorites. The Cardinals finally broke their 5-game losing streak this season on Monday Night Football, beating the Cowboys. Now, they have another streak that needs to be broken. It's a losing streak to Seattle. I believe it's like 10 in a row, I think, that they lost to them. I think Arizona could potentially make it a competitive game since Jacoby Brissett at quarterback has been like a steady force for them on offense. And they have some key defensive players coming back from injury. Also, for some reason, Seattle at home is a different team from Seattle on the road. But I do think Seattle keeps the winning streak alive, though. I have Seattle winning 24-20. Next, we get the Lions for 8.5 point favorites versus the Commanders. This is an easy game to predict. Washington does not have their quarterback anymore, and Detroit's coming off an embarrassing loss Therefore I like Lions to bounce back. I have them winning 34-17. Next, you get the Rams, who are 4.5 point favorites versus the 49ers. This is a big game because if the 49ers win, then that means they'll have the tiebreak over the Rams, and now it could be, along with Seattle, like co-favorites, win a division. However, if the Rams get their revenge from early in the season, then I would still say the Rams are the slight favorite to win the division. Turnovers were a big killer for the Rams in the matchup last time. I don't feel like that, they'll turn the ball over a lot once again. And then also, the Rams defense had one of its worst performances in that game as well. Again, I feel like adjustments will be made, and I don't feel like that will happen again. Now, based off the way the Rams kicking game's gone, maybe the kicker could lose it for them. Although it was interesting that they did sign a UFL kicker recently, so that means if their starting kicker's on a short lease. But I do feel like the Rams will find a way to win though, since they know how important this game is. I have them winning 24-23. Next, you get the Steelers versus the Chargers, your 2.5 point favorites on Sunday Football. The Chargers may not know it yet, but without their star tackle Joe Alt now out for the season, along with Rashawn Slater already being out for the season back in the preseason, the Chargers are going to have some trouble protecting quarterback Justin Herbert. I know they trade for Saints tackle Trevor Penning before the trade deadline, but he ain't close to Alt's level. I know Pittsburgh's defense, besides last week, where has not looked good all season, but the Steelers have a good pass rush to get pressure on Herbert, and it can make things interesting and hard for Justin Herbert in the offense. I think it'll be a close game, defensive battle. I'll just take the Chargers to win, although I don't feel confident about my pick here. I have them winning 21-19. Now for Monday Night Football, you got the Eagles versus the Packers, who are 1.5 point favorites. This is an interesting matchup. When good teams get embarrassed one week, they typically bounce back the next week, which is why I have Detroit, winning big this week. So in theory, Green Bay should win this game. However, Philadelphia is coming off a bye week, and as we recall last year, after Philly had their bye week, boom, they were almost unstoppable. So maybe we could see something kind of like that once again this year after a bye week. And then also, I feel like losing star tight end Tucker Kraft for Green Bay for the season, that's going to leave a hole. So therefore, the Eagles are coming off a bye week, so I'm going to take the Eagles here. I'm going to win 27-20. So thank you very much. This is my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel. Tell me about me. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day.